You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Data Center Therapy, a podcast from Ivoxy Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Nat Yeti. You see what I did there?
Ah, good job.
And alongside me is my co-host, Matt Cozzolino.
Hello, everyone.
And each episode, we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this beautiful sandbox called IT that we all play in. We share our hopes and dreams, opinions both positive and critical alike, all with a touch of empathy, because at the end of the day, we all need a seat on that couch. So we have a special guest today. It's a brand new guest to the show, hasn't been on before, and he's only been with Ivoxy for, I don't know, it could be 100 years, it could be 2 months by now, the way time goes by. But Joe Lentz, welcome. Joe, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here, and I'm happy to be at Ivoxy. It's been right around 2 months, but it feels like longer already.
You were right after Christmas, weren't you?
Yeah, immediately after Christmas I started.
Nice. Welcome.
Thanks.
You're saying all the right things. The overlords will be happy. all that.
You got a nice calendar year for your time. You don't have to do middle of the year. I'm like, I don't know, is it that many months yet? Has it been 2 years?
It worked out great for me keeping track, and also for all the paperwork. It was super streamlined.
It's easy for me because my wedding anniversary is also my work start anniversary at Ivoxy.
Nice.
Which is funny. I mean, I've been married to work longer than I've been married to my wife. Work started first, for sure. But that makes it nice and easy, and it's a great day, actually, to celebrate. It's a double whammy. So
Is it the same day?
Same day.
Wow.
Yes.
Do you plan
Yes.
that? You're like, hey, honey, we can't do it. We can't do it Friday. We got to do it Saturday because.
Yeah, I really know you want to get married on a weekend, but my anniversary for work falls on a Wednesday, so how's that
It's got to
sound?
be. Yeah.
No. So yeah, this is really great to have you, Joe, and it further beefs up the networking side of our practice. And I mean, we've really ramped up now. I think we have like four networking engineers, dedicated networking engineers now on the team, which I think is a high watermark for us.
I don't think we've ever had that many people.
4. Yeah, and it's great because it's always been a very important part of our practice. We've done a ton of networking stuff. I mean, our engineering manager, Mac Nethkin, who's been on the show a couple times, I mean, he's been with Ivoxy for a good number of years, somebody who I eminently respect, and it's just good to see some people on that side of the fence really getting more and more robust, really. And I think Joe is a big part of that. Joe, tell us, about yourself. It doesn't have to be work related, personal, whatever, but what got you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the fit with Ivoxy for starters. I've known Mac and the rest of the team for a while, and so I was glad when they brought me on. And I really enjoy working on the data center side of networking. So I think I was excited about the opportunity. It's going to be a good fit, chance to really work with what you guys do and apply all the networking stuff to that. About me as a person, I've been doing networking since 98. My first networking was in high school. We had a network engineering class in my high school that we basically went around and ran cables in all the classrooms and stuff, and then went back to the computer lab and played Quake with each other.
That's awesome. I mean,
yeah, we would.
You're lucky in 98. Yeah, 98, you've got a network engineering class in high school. I don't think a lot of places could claim that.
It was like an experimental class that some teacher thought was going to be a great idea, and then realized he didn't have the capacity to teach it. So we just sort of were let run wild and figure it out on our own.
Which is basically IT anyway, so it was pretty accurate syllabus.
Learn how to look that stuff up. Yeah.
That's totally what it was. Is everything we would just look it up ourselves, because that's
you were Alta Vistaing it. Just like COSIT.
After that, go ahead.
I was going to say I had an instructor in high school that did the same thing. You'd ask a question. He's like, well, there's the books over there. You should go flip those. Ah, okay. it's a good skill looking stuff up. Yeah, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Totally is. Yeah, I mean, we always joke that's like half our job is to just look things up quicker and better. Um, from there, I joined the Air Force, and so I eventually became a network engineer in the Air Force, and that's where I focused more on Cisco products. I did that for about 5 years, building networks and working on cryptographic systems, mostly a lot.
Is there anything we should be frightened by based on, you've seen the inner workings, and maybe we can protect your name here on this, but should we be scared, or are things pretty on the up and up security wise in the Air Force?
The Air Force is very serious about security, so I wouldn't be too worried.
Any rivalries with Mac, given that he's ex-Navy?
No. It's funny. I tell people find out I'm Air Force, and then they try to make all the Chair Force jokes and stuff. And I tell them, well, what branch were you in? And they're like, if it's Mac, I'll take it. If you weren't in, then. So.
I didn't know there were Air Force jokes. I figured, me being never had military experience. My aunt's husband and son, my uncle and my cousin are both military, but having no experience myself, I would say the Air Force is something that seems the coolest to me.
We get all the technology and stuff, all the cool technology.
Right, and now they're Space Force, right?
Yeah.
Which, but
Yeah, technology
cool.
wise for sure. So the running joke is that all we do is sit in chairs, and we always have air conditioned offices, right?
Well, that's how you fly,
air
right?
conditioner force.
Yeah. So we're the Chair Force, and then Marines eat crayons.
Crayon eaters.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that, Chair Force. That's kind of like what I feel like right now.
Yeah. So I did spend a little time in the desert. Totally. Yeah. So my transition from military life to civilian life was actually pretty smooth because I worked on computer networks in the Air Force, which isn't, super military job. I just wore green and did that, and then I got out and started doing network engineering for companies.
So that's
all
important,
it really
because I'm
changed
sure
is I
that
didn't have to
the
get up and
military
go to
aspect
PT in the morning.
really instilled that strictness to you, I'm guessing too, where in more of the commercial / personal side of things, it's probably easy to say, well, good enough, where that military background can be like, no, these are the standards we need to meet. And I think that serves well in the security arena of networking.
Definitely, it really helped me develop a lot of tools for my career as far as coming into a network and developing rules. Here's what security should look like. And I'm not trying to make every network look like what we did there, but there's always principles you want to follow. And the one thing the military is really good at is writing out procedures and documenting tasks and making.
Yeah, I bet.
So when you come to a network that needs that sort of stuff, it's easy to identify, and all of a sudden I've got that tool set already in my toolbox.
So would you say, as far as networking goes, you're more security focused, or more route switch, or more layer 2, or like where's that fall for you?
I spend most of my work doing route switch and enterprise LAN stuff, but I've always wound up being also kind of the network security guy, and you can't get away from it at all in networking, right?
Of course.
So, but I've never worked in a security shop like under a CISO. That's usually another team. So I wind up interfacing with them very heavily in almost all my jobs. It's been, help them write the standards, and then I would be the guy that implements the standards. So I always try to keep like a synergy there, right? I don't want it to be us butting heads at all.
Yeah, I think that's the one that is the broadest piece that I struggle with the most. Is it's one thing to write a security rule, a firewall rule, but there's so much more to security than that. There's much more to securing an environment than here my firewall's doing a thing.
Absolutely. You get a guy that just came out of a CISSP course, and he's like, let's do this. And then all the operations guys are like, whoa, hang on. Here's what that's actually going to look like in terms of, man hours, in terms of technology,
well,
right?
It's kind of like thing that I always go to when I think about that is that is a generally you think a good idea, and then well, wait a minute, is port security, where you like you're at an office where people, only one device, okay, one MAC address, and that's it. Another one
Hmm.
plugs in, shut the port down, and imagine what that would do to your man hours overhead without proper thought and planning put in place for something like that.
Absolutely. Like you,
Especially when my old help desk was like, just switch ports, that'll
Plug it
fix
in
it.
somewhere else. I'll fix it.
and then we wind up with a half a
Ugh.
switch that's all locked down. Yeah.
So on that note, with security as your focus, you've probably landed on a personal favorite, right? For achieving most customers' needs in terms of what a security posture looks like. I would assume, right?
As far as devices right now, I'm trending towards specializing in the Palo Alto solutions. We're seeing more and more customers really love that solution, and I've worked with a lot of firewalls, and it's definitely one of the best ones out there as far as I'm concerned. It's the interface is great, and the ease of operation, and then all of the security features you get. It's a really good solution.
And that's kind of to tie into that broader security piece. Palo Alto does a lot more than just firewalls, right? They got a lot of different security components that all kind of
They
interop
do,
with each
and
other, right?
that's you hit on the key point. It's the interoperability. A lot of places do a lot of things, but it's sort of these different solutions that are bolted together. And then when you want to
Hmm.
look at them, I'm looking in like three different interfaces. Um, you know, like for example, if you want a DNS solution, then we're buying a thing that bolts on, and then we're configuring traffic to redirect to this other appliance, and it's all this work. With the Palo Alto solutions, it's all just an add-on feature that you add onto the firewall, and it's a couple of clicks and it works great. It just shows up in your logs. It saves you time, effort, and energy to implement this stuff, and that's a resource I think people just don't value enough, is their own time and effort.
I know.
Well, I
And
I I
the other
remember it.
great thing.
Like I used to host stuff, over the years, and even when I was in ops, that point you made about things being kind of integrated versus bolting together multiple third-party solutions. How many times have you had a uptime affecting event? You had downtime, and now you're looking at not only how to get it back up, but what caused it so it doesn't happen right away again. And all of a sudden, I go into that other system that's supposed to be integrated with this, but oops, it hasn't been working for a couple of months, or
Hmm.
it didn't trigger an exception. So I thought it was working. All my monitoring looked good, but it hasn't worked, and it's just that temperature rising in your forehead, like, uh-oh, this is really ugly, and I can't even scramble to figure out what my next step should be. I think that in terms of not single pane of glass, I think that can be kind of overused a little bit, or at least over desired. I just want something that works and talks the same language to each other and can kind of leverage all of that integration to give me a better action plan and set of data when I need to go to the mattress.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, how many times do you go out to a customer site and you're talking about an issue and you're trying to gather data, and they're like, "Oh, well, it'll be in that system, but we haven't logged into it for like a year. So let me see if I can find the password." It happens so
Yes.
often because everyone in operations is always just so busy that if the tool's not very easy to use and well integrated with your other tools, you just don't spend time using it.
So what does that look like with Palo? So I've heard a ton of good things, and me being more focused on the system side, I'm certainly familiar with Palo Alto, but not deep like you both of you are very network deep. So I outside of the good vibes I've heard, right? Paint that picture a little better for me. What am I really getting? And I know that could be a huge question because that's almost like saying, what am I getting with Cisco? Well, what area of networking are you talking about here? So give me the key pillars, I suppose, that you really consider to be a robust and valuable infrastructure.
So the primary feature that I really like about them is one they call application ID, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
a security enhancement. So if we have traffic traveling over ports is how you would normally filter traffic, but nowadays almost everything is going over 443, right?
443.
HTTPS,
Yeah.
Right.
or 80. So
I hope not anymore, but yeah.
you
I
have
hope not.
you have to
At
dig
least,
right,
if only to
right.
redirect.
You have to dig deeper into the data actually inside the packet to determine what application is using that port. So they do that extremely well, and its application ID is a patented Palo Alto feature that does that. So now you can look at what application is actually traveling inside of that TCP flow.
So would you consider that like a layer 7 introspection or a web application firewall?
Yeah, a lot of
Not a
other
WAF.
vendors call it, layer 7 firewall or application firewall. Not a WAF.
But I guess
Yeah.
the value is in the actual brains of that detection engine and the heuristics it uses to say I know what application that is, or I know that that's an app that is traveling over, it's talking like this, but it shouldn't be, or I don't know what that is. Let me lock it down. It can do stuff like that.
It's that is very good, and the mechanism they use to implement it is one that is called a single pass architecture through the firewall. So rather than having to process a flow, look for TCP headers, and then hand it off to some other engine within the firewall, the Palo Altos process all of that information in one pass. So whenever you implement a feature like this application ID, you're not taking a performance hit on the firewall in order to do it.
It's already dealing with all those packets. The one I like to use is I could set up FTP to run over 443,
Sure.
right? Yeah, and so adding the app ID to that would make sure that it would only be that HTTPS traffic, that specific type of web app. Right?
How does it identify? So what you're saying is I could have, let's say I'm a company with a Palo Alto firewall and I've got one public IP, and I have one port open for incoming traffic 443. You're saying I can basically have FTP servers inside, web servers inside, and then I can point at that external WAN IP with my FTP client and say 443, and it will detect that it's FTP traffic.
I don't think we're doing routing based on the application. More the concept that you could set up a forward rule and say 443 goes to the FTP server, and that's the port that's coming in, right? Source destination port.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. You don't want 443 on that port. You want web traffic on that port. So even though it's coming in on port 443, you're app IDing it and saying, yes, the source is correct. Yes, the destination is correct. Yes, the port is correct. But it's HTTP traffic.
Where
not
some of them
traffic.
will say, no, you need to conform to the port 21 and port 20 kind of thing, and that's it, and that's the only way I'm going to be able to say it's FTP traffic. That's the old way I would say what you're saying. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or for example, like.
Have you seen that elsewhere? Is that something that other guys are doing, or is that I know the when Firepower came out, that was kind of a bolt-on like you're talking about to the ASAs. Is that single pass type of architecture something that's unique to Palo?
I think other vendors are still struggling to catch up on that. Palo Alto definitely leads in that regard, and I think last time I talked to Checkpoint, they were like just coming out with it, but Palo Alto's had it for years. Yeah.
It sounds to me like something that would hand off to other components would increase latency massively. It just seems to me that just the
absolutely
physics of it.
And
right?
historically, there's always been a huge trade-off that you're looking at when you're implementing these security solutions. Every time I turn one on, I've got to think about where I'm turning it on and what traffic I'm turning it on for, because of all of those. You're introducing latency and CPU and all of that, right?
At home, I use, and I'm not advocating this at all because I'm not even a big fan of the company's practices lately, but I have Ubiquity switching and Wi-Fi and a firewall. And it will do, I have a gig connection at home, and it will do gig. It will even do the, what do they call it? Packet identification. It's a really weak sauce version of like, hey, this was BitTorrent traffic, or this was streaming music traffic, or whatever. I don't really care about that, but they've got an IDS IPS function on it, and it will on this device, the USG, the firewall, it will, without that turned on, it'll pass and route 1 gig in both directions. Does a pretty good job at it. Fine. You turn on IDS IPS and it goes down to like 35 megabit. It just completely swamps the whole. It takes it down to like
Security stuff is
Yeah.
uses a bunch of
broadband.
CPU.
Yeah. So I can imagine how much horsepower Palo Alto has to throw at that to get it done in a single pass and not detrimentally affect your flow speed, right?
Right. Well, and historically, that's been a problem even on bigger enterprise firewalls. So that's been a big part of a security engineer's job is kind of balancing that all those security features with performance on the firewall. The the way Palo Alto pulls it off is a combination of just hardware and really smart design as far as the processing of the packets. So they use machine learning now up in the cloud to develop signatures for all of the applications, all of the data contents and the users. And then when you process it on the firewall, it's doing a single pass and looking for those signatures. So it's a lot more efficient and streamlined than handing it off to another machine that's got to actually crunch it.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's a feature that might not be that sexy to talk about or really show off, but I mean, it's an absolute necessity into turning, yeah, you can have as much security as you want. You can't do anything. Super
You're
slow.
totally right.
That just doesn't work. So they're kind of having your cake and eating it too in this way. I think that's a really great feature to advertise.
Yeah, and on paper, like you said, you can compare different firewalls or different products, and on paper, well, it says this one says it does that, but then you go to turn it
Yeah,
on.
look at that fine print.
Yep.
What's that encrypted throughput number on the 10 gig firewall is like 20 meg, right?
Yep.
Right.
It feels like
I've seen
that
it with
sometimes.
hypervisors. I've seen hypervisors, and I'm not going to name any out there, but that check, yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that. And you go, and the feature's there, and you go and try to get it to work, and it just,
We put a
no.
box there.
Right.
The box was checked. Sure it is, but yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the other one I end up talking about with customers is Wildfire. What's that one doing?
So Wildfire is, I sort of hinted at it a minute ago. Wildfire is a malware detection system that will detect zero-day malware, because what happens is if you see an executable file on the firewall that does not have a signature, the firewall will upload it to a Wildfire cloud and explode it on a virtual bare metal server and just see if it's malware or not. That process takes a little bit of time, but once it's run, then you have a brand new signature generated that says, hey, this type of file is malware. That goes into the threat prevention profiles, and then your firewall downloads it, and now you're blocking that malicious traffic that we just discovered, today.
And those updates don't go out just to the firewall. Like we see that content, that data, that information end up on their endpoint protection tool as well, right?
Yes, all those.
That's kind of what that I want to say data lake, that everything's interconnected piece is doing, right?
Yeah, so if you have Cortex XDR, which is the endpoint protection on your devices, the Wildfire signatures come down and update Cortex XDR as well. So you're getting the benefit of like a enterprise-wide virus update based on the file passing through one point somewhere in your network.
It's crowdsourced virus detection, which is smart, right? I mean, just because it's affecting you doesn't mean it doesn't affect, Joe Smith over there in Australia, and let's make sure they get those updates too, because, viruses don't discriminate about borders and all of that, right? That'll spread as much as it can.
Yeah, and the other great thing is all Palo Alto firewalls get that update within like 24 to 48 hours. There's also a subscription you can buy that means you get it within like 5 minutes.
Oh, you're saying that's free out of the box at that interval from 24 to 48.
Yep, free out of the box for 24 to 48 hours.
Yep. And I think that goes with, listen, I mean, you look at your security infrastructure, you look at your spend, how important is your data, right? And if you're willing to spend zero or little on security, I mean, that kind of dictates, well, my data's not that important. If the more important it is, the more you're willing to, bring that number down to as close to 0 minutes as possible. That's good that they offer. I mean, even free, that's fantastic because it just helps everybody.
Yeah, and they're good about that. There's a few features that I think nowadays everyone just buys and turns on regardless, that Palo Alto just adds to your basic license, right?
That's
Um,
the three, right? Threat, URL, and wildfire, right?
yeah. Um,
So, so is there a way to, okay, I get attacked with malware. Something happens, either it's gone around the the traditional methods. It's not north south. It came in. Somebody brought a USB drive in. It's spreading something. Is there a way to correlate, get root cause analysis, kind of investigate what happened? Because so many times you could roll back to the day before malware hits, but all that means is you're just T minus one again because whatever was in there in the first place that caused it is not rolled back out. So, what does Palo do to kind of help me with visibility into that kind of thing?
so what they have is called a event correlation engine, and the Palo Alto generates what they call a correlation object. That's basically just a filter that looks at a combination of all of these different features, and then if you get a match based on multiple firewall features, then that triggers a correlated event. So um, it's looking at like URL filtering, data filtering, actual traffic logs, um, all of that, and just one of those might not generate a hit, but the combination of all of these things would then generate a hit, right? So if uh,
Yeah.
a file got past your firewall and wound up on an endpoint, it might be trying to phone home to a botnet or something like that. That traffic might get just blocked out of because it's going to a known malicious site. But then if that host tries, a few more times, that's going to trigger a correlated event that says, hey, this host keeps trying to connect to, known malware sites. It's probably infected. You should go look at that. And you get right in it's called the ACC, which is the application control center. There's a little window that says threat objects, and you go look at that, and it says you should look at these hosts that probably got a problem.
Take a look at these.
And that's all based
That's
on that event. Yeah, that's all.
that's one of those things that
Go ahead.
they're kind of curating as well. Like, here's this URL that we saw registered 3 days ago, and now I'm getting a ton of traffic to it. We should probably gray hole that or black hole that or whatever. That's part of what you're getting with it with Palo is they're managing and curating that type of data for the broader internet, right?
Right. These correlation rules aren't something I have to spend all day developing myself. It's all coming from their security team that's analyzing all of these ongoing threats against the wildfire logs that they have, and all that.
I like that, especially because so many of the tools that are out there that are really great do require quite a bit of work. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But I think a lot of times you want to see it smart, at least a certain level of smart out of the box. So it gives me that feeling like, yes, I can see where this will go. Now I can put the work in to take it to the next level, like a monitoring solution, right? It's very touchy because you almost have to back down what you bring out of the box because otherwise all those alerts I'll just shut them off. I'll
Mm-hmm.
ignore them and they
Becomes
become just
noise.
no big deal and they just
Yeah.
become noise. And that's more of the challenging because people will come to us and they'll say, "What do I want to monitor?" And it really everybody's favorite answer, it depends. Um, but it's good to see that out of the box. The Palo stuff has at least that baseline intelligence, but then it doesn't require you to get to work right away before it'll do anything. But you can also, you know, take it to the next advanced level with that kind of stuff. And like you're basically describing, Joe, like a multi-layered approach, which I think is de facto the best practice anyway. I mean, you could have the best firewall in the world, the best guards at the door, but inside the building there's a fire taking room by room. Having endpoint protection like Cortex is just as important as correlating that with a firewall.
Yeah, and then this sort of model where we collectively pool our resources in order to develop all these correlation rules is hugely beneficial because, like you said, monitoring is a good parallel. You could spend all day just setting up monitoring rules and event correlation rules in your monitoring system, right? But at a certain point, you know, 80% of those across different enterprises, they're all going to look about the same. And
Right. Right.
so with threat event correlation, it's kind of the same thing. And if they're all going to look the same, then why doesn't Palo Alto just publish them for us? And then that remaining 20% you can pick up yourself as a security engineer, and it saves you all that time.
That's huge for me. Coming from an ops mindset, that's huge for me because I can get rolling out of the gate, and then I can spend time, not that 80% stuff that really should be in there out of the box.
Usable.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other one I like about the firewalls, the Palo specifically, is that when I bring it up, everyone knows AnyConnect, but I think their Global Protect VPN client is actually pretty rock solid. I like how that works. There's a lot of flexibility to that. Have you spent any time with that?
Yeah, I've had multiple customers that decided to go with the Global Protect once they had Palo Alto firewalls, and they all loved it. Everyone I talk to loves it, and once they have it installed, I touch up with customers, and they all say, "Oh yeah, we love this thing. We're not getting rid of it." It's got really streamlined interface, so your users, it doesn't interfere with them at all. They can just fire it up. There's even a mode that's an always-on VPN mode.
Have you done anything with the always-on bit?
Yes, I've had a couple of customers run it, and they loved it. The only thing is for like your IT staff, if they want to be able to turn it off, you have to give them a password to turn it off. But for your general users, they love having it always on. And it's a great, if you're looking at trying to secure our endpoints when they're out and about and not on the corporate network, which is a huge problem nowadays, having that always on VPN lets you redirect traffic back through your core firewalls and monitor the traffic, what your users are doing when they're not on site, which is a huge benefit, right?
Nice.
So all of you guys and your Palo love, and I feel it for sure. And I haven't heard the one word that I normally hear, almost the first word out of your mouth, Kaz, when we talk about Palo Alto. What is that?
It's the best firewall I've touched.
Okay. I tried. No, nobody's mentioned Panorama. Isn't that the thing?
Panorama.
Isn't that the window? That just, it's a great name, I think, by the way, for kind of
for the tool,
saying what it is. It's my favorite mode of picture to take on my phone too. But that's not that is basically the central point for managing this integrated threat protection, right?
Right. Panorama is the management server that handles all this stuff we've been talking about. It's your single pane of glass that gives you visibility into all these different features, lets you manage all the firewalls, and it's actually a really great management tool. One of the things that I think gets overlooked that I really like about Panorama is that it's got feature parity with the GUI on the firewall. So anything you can configure on the firewall itself, you can also configure in Panorama, which sounds minor, but operationally that's a pretty big deal.
Well, we've all worked with other firewall models that management either leaves in best terms either leaves a lot to be desired, or in worse terms has you looking for the Drano under the sink when you get home at night. I think, right?
Right.
So it's certainly well appreciated for like a good management, good pane of glass, and like you said, feature parity. Because if you've got this server running it, and I have to go to the firewall if I really want to do that, it almost becomes useless. Even though it's not, it just, if you can't trust it to be what it's supposed to be, then what good is it, right?
There's so many times I'll use a manager to configure rules or configure a VPN or something, and then I realize, I've got to go make a change to routing. I've got to tweak an interface. I don't do that in the management interface. I've got to SSH to the firewall and do that.
You go somewhere else, yeah.
Yeah. And it's all time out of your day.
I mean, their goal with that is you can scale up, scale down, define a policy, define a group, and just like as you deploy a new virtual edition on Azure or AWS, it phones home, connects in, gets its update. Kind of like how NSX was talking about consistent security across the board because everything's running through that NSX manager.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got an old checkpoint. I've got an old what are we at? Sonic wall, right? and it's time to refresh. It's time to look. I'm getting pressure from my boss to really step up our game on security and a coordinated um, approach to protecting ourselves. What I've read about capture the flag. What? How can you help me, Joe, um, with that transition, or show me what that might look like?
Yeah, if you're thinking about looking at Palo Alto, get in touch with me. I have access to demo systems and what Palo Alto calls capture the flag scenarios. They're just stood up virtual environments that we can log into, play around with Panorama, play around with looking at rules, look at what the event logs look like, and then the capture the flag scenarios are various simulated threats where you get to see how the uh, Palo Alto solution performs against these threats. Are very
That's
yeah.
impressive. I harken back to Unreal Tournament when you said capture the flag, but sadly that's not where you went with
yeah.
One could hope, right?
that. just aged myself out there pretty good. The original Unreal Tournament. Yes. And if you needed to migrate, that's a lot of people where it's almost like backup, where it's like, well, can I bring my backups into the new backup system that I'm migrating to? And the answer is really, for the most part, without a ton of manual work, not really. I mean, that's backup vendors don't really. It doesn't behoove them to make their data portable outside of their own system, right? For the most part, outside of a full-on restore and a reprotect. Um, but if I wanted to move, firewall vendors, I think a lot of people might have similar reservations. Does PA help smooth that at all?
Yes. So because of like that application ID, the way your firewall rules are going to be written is going to look a little different. So there's a couple of tools out there. The primary one is Policy Optimizer that's going to help you take a traditional firewall that's got only port-based rules or port-based rules that hand off to some other system and migrate those towards the Palo Alto rule set on your Palo Alto firewall. And we
cool.
can assist with that.
All right.
I like that. I think that's one of the benefits to understand the environment, to take and go through all of those rules and kind of do a bit of an audit and make sure that what's coming over is appropriate. It's an
Well,
opportunity.
yeah, like you said, it's not even just PA; it's your own edification,
Right.
so you get your arms around it even better and understand your environment. Yeah, it's a good point.
Right, because when you're dealing with an old firewall, there's bound to be a lot of rules in there that
Tons of stuff.
Right.
It's like your Active Directory, right? Chances are you didn't write every rule. And I don't really know why that's there, but I'm afraid to tear it out.
This was that app that we tore down 6 years ago. Yeah.
There's a wide open hole for it here.
Yeah.
Great. Well, in addition to all of this, and if you want to talk more PA, and we seriously could have gone 2-3 hours and talking about everything, or at least trying to talk about everything that PA has to offer. There's a lot of pieces. I mean, there's data loss prevention. There's SD-WAN. We touched on the Global Protect. There's a ton of stuff. But in addition to setting up and migrating and talking and demoing it, Joe can also do assessments. If you've got PA, let's have an objective third party come in like Joe and say, let's look at making sure that you're taking advantage of everything that you have, that you own. Let's make sure it's being done the right way. And if you've got other stuff going on, hit Joe. I don't, Joe, is your email joe@ivoxy.com? Did you get the
I
Joe?
did. Apparently I'm the first Joe at Avoxy.
Nice.
I got lucky.
I think we're on like Matt 18.
Broke our tradition of common names.
Yeah. Mr. Cozzolino has the Matt. You have the Joe.
Mm-hmm.
But I took the M too, so
there you go.
Tried to get ahead of you there, Cazzo. Yeah. Joe, I hope you enjoyed this being a guest. I hope it wasn't too torturous for you. And point being, I hope you're willing to jump on with us at a later date soon here and talk some more about what you're
Absolutely. I would love to come back and maybe talk about the SD-WAN or Prisma Access, which are other features in the Palo Alto ecosystem.
Prisma's kind of cool. I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at you guys leaving the cliffhanger right there.
Right?
Joe, thanks for joining us, man. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
So if you've got questions or you want to tell stories about, hey, this is what I used my Palo for, or like I stopped a threat, this is really cool, let's hear about it. Podcast at Ivoxy Consulting, or Ivoxy.com. I don't get our email right. Podcast at Ivoxy.com.
Who are we again?
Ivoxy Consulting, yes, but that's not our
Yeah.
domain. Yeah, sorry about that. Kazo, I really appreciate you joining as well and your time always, and I love the respect the beard mug for those.
Heck yeah.
Unfortunately, can't see us, but you're rocking a beard.
I
Your
got
mug has a beard.
another month. The end of this month will be a whole year for me.
Mine will be in May. It will actually somewhat coincide with my work and wedding anniversary,
There
by
you
the
go.
way.
May is your
I'll,
month then.
I'll have to go through my phone pictures and try to correlate that. It might end up landing on that day, which would really be a trifecta. So we'll see. We'll see if it sticks for me.
I'll get you a cake or something.
You heard it here first, folks. It's got it recorded. For Mr. Coslino, I'm Matt Yeti. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.